And welcome back to the Europe is Coming podcast. Apologies, we weren't here last week. We had quite a lot going on. So, yeah, we're back this week. And welcome. John, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I think we said the week before about our consistency and then broke it the next week.
Literally, yeah, straight away.
But no, in general, good. Happy that, I think it's like a lesson in life. No, just because you are not consistent all the time doesn't mean you have to to give up on the goal.
Yeah, well, we've had quite a lot going on. Like for you, especially, you've been doing site visits and all sorts of stuff, getting prepped for the season. But I think you revealed maybe 2 episodes ago that you were going to be doing the programming. The program's going to be doing the programming for the Mad Fitness Festival.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. So we were there with Alfonso, who we had on the podcast, checking out the venue, going through some of the final details. This year, CrossFit want the workouts submitted quite early, so we just had to finalize some of the logistics. Also, how long, because for making time caps, making all of the scheduling and all of that, it's important to know, like, get the distances right, different things. So I can try and say things without giving too much away.
For sure. And for those that haven't listened to it, we our first behind the scenes interview that we did on the channel was with Alfonso, who is the director of the Mad Fitness Festival, as John said. So if you're interested in how a competition, especially like a semi-final or a big CrossFit competition, is kind of pulled together, and some of the little details, just like John saying about things being submitted and that sort of stuff, please go back and listen to that episode. It was really interesting. But there's lots of things that go into competitions that you don't normally think about when you just chuck on a stream and you're watching it and you're like, oh, this isn't going very well, or I'm not really enjoying this, and or it is going well and this is amazing. And there's just so many little details that go into them that I've been around CrossFit for a little while, and some I had no idea about. So it is a fascinating world. It's a fascinating layer on top of CrossFit as a competitive sport.
Yeah, and the amount of money that you need to get to Games broadcast, Rogue broadcast, WFP broadcast, you're in the high hundreds of thousands in order to produce something like that. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. And, this is why most competitions aren't broadcast that well, because, it's the production value, and having everything in place is just so expensive.
Absolutely. So, weekly update. What's in your mind this week, John? What do you want to start with?
Oh, well, there's a few things going on. I think one thing we've been doing is watching the Open report from week to week, and as we talked about before, it's an interesting indicator, or to have some hard data on, in some ways, the health of the sport and the community.
Mm-hmm.
And as we get this graphic up from Nona and Noble as we covered the weeks, it's just interesting to track it visually in this way and see, what's happening. And I know that Mike looks into this, puts a lot of time, puts a lot of work into it, and also to be able to go, okay, why this year has 2026 all of a sudden started to trend lower than 2022. We can see in like a couple of days' time, 2022 just seemed to jump high. And it'd be interesting to correlate that if there are reasons why. I think one thing we said earlier on the podcast is, like, it's interesting that the Opens that started announcing earlier have both finished with higher signups. Now, is that just an association or causation? It's hard to know, but I think it's an interesting data point for CrossFit, being like, well, it's probably does. I can't see any reasoning why they don't try that.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think so, even just to see what would happen. Like you said, the 2 most successful Opens post sort of COVID really started way earlier in terms of their push to get signups. And also, these are things that it's awesome that this is pulled together, that we can kind of talk about it and have a look at it. But it's even just types of marketing campaigns, like those kind of things that you'd have to like feed into it as data points in terms of like What were the messages? How were they like? These are things that businesses do. Some of the businesses I've worked for, and constantly looking at your campaigns and doing retrospectives on them and things like that. So it would be interesting. It'd be cool if they had that data, but I'd be really interested to just know if CrossFit do track those things.
Yeah, so I spoke to Mike about this. I'll speak because, as we mentioned, about like bringing in the previous years, from the start of the Open, because that'd also be really interesting. There's basically, because he didn't get the, all this data is when he started taking it from the website. So for the 2018 or whatever it may be, like those peak years, he's only got the final numbers, not the days
leading up to that.
And you've got to think, I mean, it's just really interesting for CrossFit to know from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah, I hope they are looking at this sort of data to look at what they do. And we've sort of said this endlessly since we started the podcast, but looking at something like High Rocks and live participation and just how many people seem to be interested in doing a form of fitness in a social group setting, and then looking at the numbers versus, and I know it's a different thing, but even so, it's still, we've talked about proof of concept. And yeah, so the numbers for those that are, we've got the graph in front of us. If you are listening to us on your audio feed and you're not tuning in or watching the video later, I should also plug this. We're live on YouTube at the moment, 6 p.m. UK time and 7 p.m. Spanish time, which I think is Central European time. Correct me if I'm wrong there, John, as a time code. But yeah, if you fancy joining us live and interacting with us and giving comments and feedback and stuff like that, we're on YouTube. The link is in the description of wherever you're listening to this. I put the link so you can go and look at the channel. It's the program's training channel, which remind me of the name, John, because I always
yeah. So we do have 3 channels now. This is the Program Academy.
Program Academy. So the link for this will be in the description. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you're listening to this, the link will be in the description. So please click on that. And then if you fancy coming and joining us live every Monday at 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Spanish time, get involved. But we're looking at the graph in front of us. So at the moment, we are 11 days out from the Open starting. So 10 days out, sorry, from the Open starting. The last call of this, so I think that's from yesterday in the US. So at the moment, numbers wise, 2026 is on, this is where I mess up the numbers again, 119,478 signups. Okay, so that is, at this point, apart from 2025, so last year, the lowest performing year at this stage since post-COVID. And we were sort of saying when we kind of started having a look at this a few weeks back, we were going to track it kind of against 2022 because it started very similar time, very similar line on the graph, and that's actually pulling away now, slightly ahead. So at this point in 2022 there were 137,199, so like roughly a 20,000 delta there.
Yeah, it's, we had our bets before this, and I was, I think when it first, within a few weeks at first releasing, I was at the 300,000, which is now looking, I mean, unless there's some crazy push, it does not look like it's going to happen at all. I mean, now even to overtake 2022, which was at was it 276, to overtake that number now is looking unlikely as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless something happens and there's a big final push towards the closing stages, which sometimes happens. We've got some interesting open announcements. I think if they're really fun looking workouts and like the open announcements are awesome, that can really generate some hype. And I think perhaps great to get your take on this. Perhaps there's something around the media coverage of just the space.
100%. It's, I think there's a few things that we talked about. One, this has never been done, so it doesn't influence past ones, but helping incentivizing gyms to help people to sign up as well. I think something we've spoken about. And then the other thing, I'm pretty sure it's tied to media. I know that CrossFit, I think in 2025, maybe the first year that they did it. They actually started paying some influencers or people within the community to promote the Open, which I think is a good strategy to get the Open out there to their audiences and do different things like that. Yeah, you've got to think with the, I think that there's an obvious reason why it starts to peak in the last few days, and that's because people start, when the workout's announced, people then submit their scores, so you end up with, a lot of people just end up being last minute. You go, well, I'll do the workout, then I go, I've got to submit my score, and that's when I sign up. So that's why you end up with these last day peaks. And then also with the Open, you can submit your score to the end of that, and that's why it flatlines at the end, because no one's going to sign up if they miss the first workout or whatever that may be.
Yeah, something else I was thinking about that I have very fond memories of, because it's kind of when I was booming, when I got into watching the sport of CrossFit, was around this time. I swear there was lots of like Road to the Games content coming out, where the behind the scenes media team would be going to athletes and showing it's where the kind of narrative arcs for the season would start to be dripped out. And every week on the YouTube page, we'd have like 2 or 3 athletes, and we'd be telling their story, and it'd be almost like you get in MMA, like the lead up to a big title fight or something like that, where they're kind of doing the behind the scenes of the athletes. And there might be some of that stuff out there, but I haven't seen any of that kind of stuff. Like, there has been bits, I think WFP have been doing some of that stuff, but I haven't seen anything from CrossFit. And I think Savan's been putting out some behind the scenes from the games last year on his own channel, but there feels like there's a massive void from CrossFit themselves in terms of media around athletes in this time, which is normally a great way of building hype up until the Open.
Yeah, and also just the releasing of the games documentary. This is maybe a good time if they could time it for that in. And this has been shown that I think the Drive to Survive really revolutionized sports documentaries. And when did they choose to release it? Well, basically a week before the opening of the season, or however many weeks before, because people get interested, they end up following the season, off-season happens. It's just like a proven strategy that they could make work.
Yeah. So we're speculating a bit of the impact, but there are sort of notable things, I think, in terms of this impact, and we're seeing that number sort of grow, but very steadily, and we're not getting any big hockey stick moments by the looks of it like we have in previous years. So we'll continue to track it. We'll talk about it each week and the lead up to it, and see who's closest at the end in terms of their guess. But yeah, also, again, if you're listening to this and you have any thoughts or inputs, feel free to comment on the video or email. There's an email in the link in the description where you can email in and for questions or comments on this kind of stuff. We'd love to hear your feedback on your thoughts, or are you doing the Open? If you're listening, are you doing the Open? And if so, what are you looking forward to? And if you're not, flip side question, like why not? Why are you not signing up to the Open this year? We'd love to hear from you. All right, John, where do you want to go next after the Open?
I think it's interesting to see about the WFP. Obviously, I think their qualifiers start. It might be even just started for Mexico for the first tour stop, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see the number of athletes they get. I think the Indianapolis, which was the first tour stop of the 2025 season, arguably had one of the highest levels of athletes in any competition in the whole of 2025. Now we move into 2026. It's looking like the games will have that, and the level at WFP will be noticeably lower than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. What are your thoughts? Because there's been quite a lot of chat in the last 2 weeks about a number of big athletes not taking their spots in the WFP season and kind of not taking their pro cards. And do you think, I mean, it seems like the latest one to decline was Lucy Campbell, for instance, and a lot of the Boys Uninterrupted crew. Only James Sprague seems to be doing it this season. So it
Yeah, I
does
don't
seem
know
like
if is he confirmed or not confirmed. I thought as well he was.
I don't know if he's confirmed. I just heard him say on a podcast that he was the only one that was going to be doing it out of them. So maybe there's not final confirmation, but it seemed to like he was leaning to that way from what I understood. But I'm not confident enough to say 100%.
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a bit of a mix, and this is one of the things that we alluded to a few weeks ago, that what might happen and is looking to happen is that WFP becomes like the second tier of the games, where the top athletes, they go, well, I'm going to go all in on games. I want to win the CrossFit Games. I want to, honestly, I think, okay, prize money is obviously some factor, but I don't think it's the only thing. There's a lot of prestige there. And then a lot of the other athletes will go, well, and we saw this last weekend. There was a competition called Crucible Athletes held in the UAE. And the winner took home $50,000, which is basically equivalent to second place at the CrossFit Games. And the level of, in terms of like the level of athlete there, therefore how hard it is to win that event compared to coming second at the Games, is just not even comparable. Yet a lot of athletes are going to take that risk. And it's presumably not a financial risk, but there's a lot of other motivations for doing it, probably about becoming the fittest on earth, or at least fighting for that title. And then, the athletes, honestly, if you're not top 10 at the Games, then you're probably losing a lot of money in order to just go there. So then you go, well, WFP is paying high all the way down. And that's where a lot of the other athletes are probably thinking, okay, this is a good opportunity for me to make some money, make a proper living, understanding that, top 10 at the Games is just out of reach and arguably not even financially a good decision for them to take.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the interesting thing with WFP is that a lot of the athletes basically get their hotel and their accommodation, the travel kind of paid. Like the top 20, I think, get that as part of their contract. So they're not losing any money. And then most, if not all of them, are getting a paycheck as well. So it's a real incentive. It's like a professionalized, I get to go and compete and I'm going to get definitely paid. And I still find it interesting that a number of athletes are still, for the prestige of potentially winning the Games, and like you say, maybe not making as much money, are still incentivized by the I want to win this competition, or at least podium at this competition, instead of perhaps winning money and winning or podium at the WFP.
Yeah, and I think this is where the storytelling is really important. We've spoken about media so much. The media, the narrative, the why should athletes go to WFP? And I think that's an extremely fundamental question, not necessarily easy, but that you really have to ask and have an answer for, because otherwise you end up, you end up in this situation where, arguably the money that's being put down justifies it being the best competition in the world. But if it doesn't get realized like that, then that's not the perception it ends up having.
Yeah. So do you think it stays like that? Do you think that the Games has got this kind of magnetic pull that because, again, without getting too much of the details, because I know it separates some of the community, but like there's been some issues with the Games over the last few years, and to where we've seen WFP come along and some athletes decide to take themselves completely out of the season and not return. Probably, arguably, the fittest woman on earth this year, if she decided that she wanted to turn up, which would be Laura Horvath. She's proven time and time again that outside of Tia, she's kind of the person who's going to win most competitions, and still deciding, from what it seems, again, it could be some drastic, but seems like she's not going to compete in the Games season this year and continue to do Rogue and WFP. But do you think that there's ever going to be a shift the other way, away from CrossFit, or what do you think?
I think there's still a big question mark of the sale of the company, and I think that could have a huge impact. I mean, since the company's been announced that it's for sale, really we've seen no changes. And therefore, I think the direction that, presumably at some point in time there will be a sale. And you would also presume, as with any sale of anything, the new owners will want to change because they believe they can improve the direction somehow. I think that's going to have the biggest impact on the sport. They divide the sport. Do they incorporate it more? Do they forget about the sport? They go, okay, well, let's actually just focus on community. And there's so many different ways that it could go. And I would say that throughout all the ownership of CrossFit, even from Glassman back in the day, the sport has never been a priority. Even when it then came Don Full as CEO, they were trying to down prioritize the sport. So it's like it's always been in a weird scenario where the sport of CrossFit has always been kind of downplayed by the person in charge of the sport of CrossFit. And I think a big part of that has been the cost. And I think then a big kind of like caveat says, well, can you make the sports financially viable and actually turn a profit from it? So I think that's why everyone's been so impressed with Hyrox, because they've obviously managed to do that and just do it in such a exceptional way. I mean, I think most people you speak to about Hyrox, like, it's just nothing but impressed about what they've managed to achieve in, what's a relatively short period of time.
Yeah. Did you watch any of the Phoenix Hyrox? No,
I did. Yeah.
Was on while we in between our little gap of speaking to C2 and having a week off. Yeah, the Elite 15 from Phoenix was on.
Yeah, we have within the program. We also have an agency, and one of the athletes, JK. He managed to qualify with an impressive comeback, so that was exciting to see. He always in his races. He's the last few races he's like come back from behind. And the last time in Melbourne and in Hamburg, he hadn't managed to kind of come back from behind enough, whereas this time he ended up coming second. So I think that was very good to see.
Yeah, it's very cool. It was one thing that struck me about Hyrox, and this kind of pays into what you were talking about just then about the games, was that they were in that the football stadium. I think it was it the Atlanta Falcons, or I might be conflating places in America. So apologies if I got it wrong, but massive stadium. I mean, it didn't seem, all the people seemed to be on the floor and not in the stands. But if that's a show of intent, if they start managing to fill stadiums of that, start putting more people in the stands, it's only going to grow and grow and grow. And, you look at CrossFit, and that's one thing I will say, at the games, they still managed to fill an arena. Even though some of the semi-finals do seem to be, in America, that is, seem to be having a shrinking audience. So it's be interesting to see how these sports start to evolve from now, because we've always known the games to have like this really great in-person crowd.
And I think another interesting thing that's happening is from the growth of Hyrox, there are dozens in each. I mean, and you extrapolate that to, I imagine, all the places that it's happening around the world, you end up with thousands of like fake Hyroxes, or Athics has now jumped onto the scene and seem to be doing a great job. They've got this concept that you could argue is a bit more between a Hyrox event and a CrossFit event. I was just speaking to a girl. We, like, each Saturday, as you know, we do our MASH at C23. Now, speaking to one of the girls who's done a few competitions on the island. We've got a competition on the island that lasts 3 days. We've got this, one of these fake Hyroxes that's, basically a Hyrox with a few different stations. There's lots of those now, maybe 3 or 4. And there's also a competition that's kind of mimicked what the Turf Games does, which is arguably more similar to Athics. And she just loved that format, having to go to a competition that's 3 days long and miss work or whatever. But actually, you can rock up to competition like 2-3 hours. You don't have to, for the CrossFitters who aren't necessarily the best at running and enjoy lifting some weights or doing skills, that it fits perfectly. and it's a format that lots of people are going to do very well at, but ultimately or ironically CrossFit won't do because they've not created one of these formats in order to do well at something like that.
And do you think that, I mean, we started excuse me, at the top of the show talking about the Open, and we've sort of talked about this before, but I think that there's this that maybe is having an effect, the fact that, you know, this scales up and scales down in terms of Hyrox. Like you have the Elite 15, which is kind of that pro race, but then everyone can go and do one on a weekend. Like one of my clients, so I PT, he went, I can't remember where he went actually, but he traveled into Europe and did one last weekend and just made a bit of a weekend of it with his sister, did the doubles, and that was kind of like a little weekend trip where they got to hang out. So people are kind of making events of these, whereas if you wanted to go and do a CrossFit competition, there are local throwdowns that are great, and I know lots of people that do them, but a lot of them have like qualifiers and there's barriers to entry, or it's a whole day or a whole weekend, like you said, whereas this can be like, let's go and do a race and then we can go sightsee or actually do some other stuff around it. And it means that this trip isn't just for this comp, which I know some of our community love, but there are a lot of people that don't want to take up their entire weekend with doing burpees or running around a track.
Yeah, and understandably so. You know, you also don't know what you're going to be doing at the CrossFit competition. So, like, you know, if a movement comes up you can't do, a lot of people might. There's just lots of these obstacles that go into it. And I don't think, you know, I think that the unknown and the unknowable for the games and for these programs it's created some of the best athletes in the world. It's created, you know, amazing competitions. But is there a place to have something that's a bit more packageable so it could go out and, you know, reach a lot of people? Yeah, I think so. And you know, for people who preach about the methodology and all these things, it's just a great gateway in order to get people in and get people into gyms, etc., etc.
Yeah, the gym I coach at, we've done a number of Hyrox half sims, and they are always full. Like we run them up to 40 people, they're always maxed out. I think we've done like 6 or 7 of them now. They're always full, and they put on like a CrossFit kind of competition or group of workouts, and most of the community just not that interested.
And it's sad to see. I tell you what, it is very sad to see that these things are happening, and I think it'd be really nice to see data that, you know, says the opposite. Like in terms of athletes getting big engagement. I mean, by the time we compare, you know, you go, well, look at the athletes who rose up in that 2014 to 2000 and maybe 18, maybe 19 phase. Like the amount of followers they have is huge. Someone was speaking to someone the other week, and they pulled up, like, you know, you got Jason Kalipa, like 2008 or somewhere around that, champion, you know, has got like over 500,000 followers. Whereas, you know, the winners of today, they're struggling to get up to the 200,000. Castro is like 700,000 followers. You know, it's like, and how does that flip round? How does that change? How does that excitement come back? You know, one of the things we talk about as well as the youth of the competition. Actually, do you have? I sent that the graph to you a little while ago, and I think this is actually a really interesting graph to look at.
Yeah, I don't have it to hand, annoyingly. Have you got it that you could put?
I sent it in your WhatsApp, actually. Oh, yeah, here it is. Let me tag you in it again. Yeah, just sent it through back on the.
Okay, let me see if I can pull this up. Because I'm on a different browser. Hang on, let me see if I can. I might not be able to pull this up. Apologies if you're a listening listener and you're not watching us. I'm just trying to pull up a bit of graphic. Let's see if I can copy this image somewhere. Hang on 2 seconds. I might not be able to pull this up because I'm using a different browser
Okay,
for
I
this.
think can you open that in that window?
Yes, I can. There we go.
Yeah, so this is in essence, what it's displaying is the average age across all divisions who signed up, for men and for women, across all the years. And so when the Open first started, it's between 25 and 30 for both men and women, and that's like, this is back in 2011, so it's a long time ago. But the trend has been going up each year, which I think is probably to be expected a bit, because as the sport ages, so do the people, and therefore you kind of end up having more and more people. The worrying thing about this is that we know, from 2018, the number of participants has been going down. So you end up with this number of participants being going down, but the average age of those participants is starting to go up and up, which obviously does not lend itself to a healthy growth over the next period of time, or it's not trending in the way that it should do. If the total number of participation was going up and we saw this slight average age, you'd understand it, because when I started, I was I've jumped the line a bit, but I was in fact, anyway, in 2011, it's like 15 years ago. Yeah, so I've almost like jumped with the line a bit, I mean, a lot of people who did this in 2011 would have followed this trajectory. We push up a little higher in the age, but it's not. We've kind of, the graph has aged with us. We've aged with the graph.
Indeed, and it's looking increasingly like, as you suggest, that people have got into CrossFit kind of 2010s and early 2020s, maybe, like probably 2010s, and stayed with CrossFit, and then since sort of COVID time, CrossFit hasn't really been able to attract new and younger audience, and perhaps even, and you see this quite a lot, that a lot of the younger people are being pulled in by their elder siblings or parents, not by CrossFit being a thing that the younger I almost said the youth then and made myself sound very old, but younger fitness, like in people who are interested in fitness, want to partake in. It doesn't seem to be that, I don't know, I hate using the word cool again, it makes me sound very old, but it doesn't seem to be something that is perceived as cool by younger age groups. And actually others, like High Rocks, for instance, seems to be far more popular amongst younger audiences.
No, and this is also in a time where training and, as we mentioned, training and sport, the sport of training has become so popular.
Yeah,
the amount of gyms in Spain, like in Mallorca now, is insane. And there's gyms here that have, there's it's a population. I think I forget, the population keeps growing here, but it's just over 500,000 or something like that. And we've got gym chains on the island that have over 10,000 members, and that's coupled, like the peak of the affiliation in Mallorca, I think, is around 12 affiliates here. Now the number of affiliates has dropped, but the number of gyms that are in essence of that same style of CrossFit gyms, old school CrossFit gyms, has grown just to crazy amounts. Actually the gym where C23 is, it was the first on this block, whereas now, without crossing the road, you can go to 5 different gyms. There's a rock climbing gym, classic Globo gym, a gym that's in essence very similar. You have C23, and then you have like a more PT focused movement specific gym, and literally it's quite funny, as everyone does it's a 1K loop around the block. So you'll get all the gyms like doing these 1K loops, but every gym will go in at different stages depending on which location they have. But yeah, and they all seem to be doing relatively well. And, yeah,
it is like peak train, like era of people training and being more aware that fitness is important and more interested in fitness than ever before. And yet CrossFit as a, the business that says that they crown the fittest person on earth seems to be declining in terms of its people who are partaking in it.
Also, the gym's paying for the affiliate in order to use that name. And I think this is the weird thing. When you speak to the gyms, they have memberships going well. They have lots of people interested. It's not that the gyms are doing badly and people are losing interest in training. It's just that the brand is struggling. And that's something that they need to sort out. And as much as I wouldn't like it to be the case, it is the case. And I think that something needs to be done in order to take ownership of that and be like, hey, look, whoever that is, whatever group decides to buy it, I suppose this is the weird thing now when with everyone's kind of waiting for it to be sold who's in their positions. And it's presumably not the most motivating thing to be in, go just waiting around for someone to buy the company where you might or might not have a job in the future.
Yeah, this is a really bad analogy, but it came to mind when you were just talking then. It almost feels like a relationship where both people know it's going to end and they're just waiting for the other one to pull the trigger. And I think a lot of people are kind of waiting for CrossFit to be sold, to see the new direction, to, decide how they engage with it. And the community is still really split because of certain things. And actually, maybe this is a time that we talk about Mr. Dave Castro, because of all the things we've talked about, we haven't mentioned him. And you did mention his follow account. And he is a very interesting character who's sort of the one person who's managed to sort of hold on from legacy CrossFit. There's lots of other people that started CrossFit or in the early days of CrossFit here. They're no longer attached to the brand or work for the company anymore. And he is one that has sort of managed to prevail. But I don't know if you saw, and I wanted to kind of talk to you about this anyway, but Andrew Hiller put up a video the other day. I don't think he created it. I think someone else created it. Maybe the guy we talked about before.
Is it with Master? Yeah, he has. I love his videos. His statistical analysis, the way he looks at certain data of certain things, is really spot on.
So
I saw he just come on to Hiller's channel, but I haven't watched the video yet.
Yeah, so this video here, Dave Castro is washed. A really interesting video. So this is Andrew Hiller's channel. If you haven't heard of Andrew Hiller, I'm sure you probably have if you're listening to this. He's pretty vocal in the community these days. But this video was done, I've forgotten the guy's name, the guy who did that other video we talked about. I'm really sorry for not giving you props, mate. It wasn't mentioned in the video itself, but I think it might have been him because it's a different person narrating the video. But I think it was, the guy who's done a couple that Andrew Hiller's reposted. But effectively, the video, it's really detailed look at Dave Castro's programming over the years of the games. And it in particularly calls out the 2025 games for having a really low amount of volume of squats, being very reliant on things like machines, having big issues around things like the ped board. And the video, in essence, and hopefully I'm not doing this injustice, and I would recommend, if this topic interests you, I highly recommend going and watching the video. It's a detailed breakdown of data surrounding programming and in particular Dave's influence on the games. But he kind of said that he went, in essence, Dave went from being an innovative programmer that inspired the community to do different things like dumbbell snatch, for instance. Like, for those that aren't aware, we didn't used to dumbbell snatch. Now it's like one of the biggest main movements within functional fitness circles, but that came around, I think it was 2015 or 2016, broke all of our backs. None of us could do it properly. None of us had dumbbells. We were all gluing, like I saw people like taping plates to dumbbells to get the weight up. It was a hilarious time in the CrossFit world. But he basically said, like, he used to inspire the community, bring out these incredible workouts, like do loads of cool stuff at the games, and now he's kind of run out of ideas. It's kind of or asking the question, has he run out of ideas? And I guess Dave's a big character in the sense that the games does inspire quite a lot of what happens in affiliates and training and the open. And
competitions all around the world as well.
Like, I remember when Devil's Press blew up, I think it was maybe Miranda Alcatraz who put put that in. I think she saw it somewhere, put it in Street Parking, and then I remember it going really viral. Sort of
I actually
around.
think Dubai was the first competition to have the Devil's Press in. They've kind of done some
Really?
A jump squats. The Dubai is always when the Sheikh who was in charge of it, he always liked to add these new movements not been seen before. They had like clapping push-ups. So they've it doesn't happen anymore. But when they did, they also like to try and introduce something unique.
Yeah. So anyway, all that said, Dave is obviously a big personality in the community, and he's been quite divisive recently. And perhaps there's an element of his involvement as well in the sport and other areas that is having an impact at the moment.
Yeah, for me, it comes down to, we've mentioned this before, but what are the goals of the company? Like, where does the sport want to go? What are the goals of the company? What are the goals of Castro? Because I think sometimes it doesn't necessarily match up with what other people think they should be, but it's not necessarily being transparent in that regard. Like if you go to the one goal that's been put out there, it was Don Ford, I think it was like 30 million. He wanted 30 million people doing CrossFit, where you go, well, we're obviously moving further and further away from that goal, not towards it. But if that's the metrics of success, okay, then things are not going well. It'd just be interesting to know how they're defining success, to see like, okay, maybe do we need a change or not? Because if you guys want to go and do this or take it in this style, or not have big brands on board or whatever it may be, then you can define it as a success. But if that's not the case, then okay, maybe things need to be re-looked at and reimagined. And I think ultimately from my point of view, it comes down to that, not knowing what the actual goals and directions are. You kind of left a bit in the lurch. But if the goal is to get CrossFit to 30 million people, then things obviously need to change, because it's definitely not moving in that direction.
Mm. Yeah, and
in a time when it should be, like if there's ever a time for the environment of training to be super popular, then it is now.
Yeah, it's almost like developing an app in the AI in the internet bubble boom, when Instagram and Facebook and all these apps were coming out and sort of having your app decline. It's like this is the time where it's fruitful ground. So I completely get that, and it'd be interesting to see. I think it'll be really interesting to see how the Open goes, especially from a programming perspective. Obviously, that's kind of like the first judgment of the season, to see what Dave has up his sleeve and see how the announcements go. Because again, typically they were like, the announcements I think were a big part of what made the Open special, like how the announcement went, what they looked like. And with that in mind, we're kicking off with 26.1 very soon, and there's 26.2 has recently been announced, which is going to be, sorry, I'm just pulling this up, in Portugal, with Lucy Campbell, Amy Kringle, and Miriam Van Roor, who typically does amazing in the Open. She's actually, I think she won it last year. What are your thoughts on the Open announcement?
I think it's super cool. Like, I mean, the three best European females at the games. And you get to see them throw down together in Europe. Like, it's a great combo. I must say, I'm a little sad. We have one of our athletes on board, Thiago, who's been like the fittest in Portugal for a very long time, and also had his first games this year, and then also happens to train like 20 minutes away from where the announcement is.
No
and
way.
I was like, no, surely he should be involved somehow in the announcement, but that was sad. But I think in terms of from a personal point of view, it's sad. But I think in terms of a general spectacle, like it'll be a top 3 European women at the games all throwing down together. I think it'd be really cool.
Who do you think wins?
I think it's very programming dependent. I think
I know.
that
I was like thinking that as soon as I asked it, I was like, this is such a hard question to answer without knowing the workout.
We should put another one of our bets on. I'm not doing very well on our bets though, but I think I would say you're probably like 6 to 8 girls that could win the CrossFit Games this year, and I wouldn't be like wow surprised. And all 3 of those girls are in there. You've also got Gabby's coming back from Europe. You've got Emma Lawson, Olivia Kirkstad. You've got quite a lot of depth who could all take the win now that Tia's not there.
Yeah, absolutely. On between these 3 ladies as well, I think this will work out be really interesting. It'd be interesting to see because the other thing is like how you do, because you can do really well in an open workout, but doing an open live announcements are very different. You're not in your own gym. You don't have like your usual like habits and kind of pre-workout rituals and people around you and stuff. It's a very different environment, and it's being streamed live to the entire CrossFit nation. So everyone's a bit. I think it's a different level of.
With Miriam, there's certain things where she's actually only competing against herself. She's just so good at certain things that like there's not even a competition.
Have you got any examples off the top of your head that you can?
Well, she did the Madrid qualifier, and we had in a 3-minute window, back squat, 3-minute window, split jerk. And I forget but it was close. So it was like 167 back squat and like a 124 split jerk, which, the split jerk, maybe there's some girls in the world who end up getting there, but it's like handful. But then the back squat at 167, I mean, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
It is outrageous. And so, yeah, like heavy squatting, she's obviously going to do very well there. I mean, she rookie year placing top 10. Yeah, you then got Lucy. She has like, she's just got this incredible engine and incredible will. She's also like, it's interesting once you go over 2 event wins at the CrossFit Games, you enter in a very elite category, and I think Lucy's now on like 4 or 5. I forget that. And then Amy's just extremely talented athlete who has got a lot of potential. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 of any of those 3 winning. But then if the workout is in Miriam's wheelhouse, then it's like, hey, it's very hard to be anywhere close.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting watch. And I mean, like we talked about, I wish that CrossFit were doing a bit more to tell that story. I think there's probably a lot of people in the community that don't know who Miriam is, and probably don't know some of those things about her. So there's definitely some really cool stories they could be weaving in about that kind of stuff. So hopefully they do a bit more in the lead up to it, and certainly on the evening of the announcement, talk to them and get some more info about them on the horizon. But like you said, Lucy's made a bit of a splash with winning some events at the Games, and Amy obviously doing so well at WFP and some other events. They're becoming household names. So hopefully Miriam can get some props as well. And then scrolling down here, I noticed this. We talked about the documentary. I hadn't even noticed this or heard this, but apparently the next documentary, Fittest on Earth 2025, which is the CrossFit Games documentary, will be released on the 3rd of March.
Okay, well, I mean, it's an interesting. It's just what we spoke about. It's an interesting choice of date to release it basically a week after a few days after the first open workout gets submitted. Like, why would you not just push it a week before?
No idea. So
I also haven't, considering the amount of CrossFit that we both consume, I also hadn't seen this. So
yeah. And I was like, neither of us, normally if one of us will see something, and I'm like, I know I'm not fully on all the socials, but I normally do see stuff.
It was also released. I see the date. It was actually, because today obviously it's February 16th, so it was only released today.
Yeah, so this is new news. But again, this announcement, I don't know when CrossFit announced this, but the article we're looking at is on Barbell Spin. It was put out today. It's saying that the Games documentary is going to be released on the 3rd of March, and that you can pre-order it on Apple TV. It just says you can pre-order. So I don't know if that's now, if that's live now. It doesn't say a date. So yeah, this is a thing, and as John said, a couple of things that strike me odd here. One, they've announced this now. We're literally like 10 days out from the first open workout, so it's not huge amount of time for people to watch it, like get excited about stuff. It'll be released during the open, so a week after the open announcement, and then there's not like it doesn't seem like it's been a huge deal. Like lots of people talking about it. I haven't seen a trailer for it. Normally there's a trailer for these sorts of things. Maybe it's posted while we've been on live, or it's being posted in the next 24 hours, but I'm not seeing a trailer for it or anything like that. Oh, the trailer's at the bottom of the article. I won't play it now, but there is a trailer that we can watch as well. So again, team, if you're interested, go on to Barbell Spin. And this is at the bottom of the Lucy Campbell, Amy Kringle story. It's kind of in that thread. But yeah, really, I feel like that is quite a low-key announcement.
Yeah, true.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about today, John?
No, I'm excited for our guest on Thursday that'll be coming out on Monday. To get another, I'm really enjoying the behind the scenes. So we also have an elite camp on the island happening on starting. Athletes arrive on Thursday, starting on Friday. So like a lot of have like 10 athletes here. So that'll be an exciting first one of the year. So a couple of cool things coming up.
Awesome. And what's going to happen at the athlete camp? Have you got much planned?
It's like 4-day camp, and for our elite camps, they're fun. You know, we just get like group of relatively high level athletes together. We'll hit some workouts before the season. Also a chance to test on some of the more technical things, both in the gym and like out of the gym with swimming or running and the stuff that we do there. So it's just a nice opportunity to see the athletes in a bit more of a competitive, like it's a competitive training environment rather than competitive competition environment. And it allows you to make observations and changes in an easier way.
Nice. And will you do the open as a group each week, or will people kind of group up and do them, or will you do it as a group? Or
yeah, we'll have like 4 athletes on the island who do them together, but we won't have the camp lasting out to the first open. Most of the athletes will go back to their gym.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll look forward to a bit of an update on that when we next do a weekly update. Keen to hear more about that. Yes, as John said, we have another guest at the latter stages. I'll put my teeth back in. Latter stages of this week, so that'll go out next week instead of a live. We'll be probably putting that out in its place. But going to be really interesting conversation, I think, and we'll share more about that when we get closer to the time. And then just one other thing I wanted to mention. I don't know if you saw last week, Rogue have increased their cash investment for the 2026 Invitational Prize Purse, which is really cool to see. So,
Rogue are just like, they're also playing their own game, like Miriam back squatting. Rogue just do. They just do such a good job. I mean.
Yeah, so again on Barbell Spin, for the 2026 Invitational, they're contributing 1.2 mil towards a prize purse. On top of that, they purchased 200.
They lost a lot of money on their Bitcoin purchase.
I know. I was about to say. They purchased $275,000 of Bitcoin. So whatever growth on this will be added to the prize purse, which at the moment probably not looking all that amazing.
No, they're not. It's like it's lost like 40% of its value from now, but yeah.
Yeah,
they're tracking it there as well.
Yeah, they've actually put the Bitcoin graph in the article, and now unfortunately it's had a bit of a nosedive during February. But yeah, it's cool to see Rogue investing more in the competition, and that just feels like a bit of a outside of, with WFP and Rogue, it just feels like there's a bit more momentum coming towards cash for athletes, which is always cool to see, especially when we talk about professionalizing the sport more and more.
Okay, Adam, I have to bounce.
Yeah, no worries at all. Well, gang, thanks so much for listening. And we've had a couple of people tune into the live, so thank you very much for watching. Get involved. We'll be back, as I said, at the end of the week with our next guest, and all the links for all the things that we mentioned will be in the description. So if you want to come join us on the live next week and shoot us some questions and all that good stuff, please get in touch. But John, have a good week. Good to see you, and I'll see you soon.
Okay, man. I will see you on Thursday.